The sun had just broken free from behind a veil of morning clouds, casting a golden shimmer across the cobblestone path leading up to the little chapel. Everything felt like it had been dipped in honeyed light: the white chairs, the string quartet softly tuning in the corner, the guests buzzing with quiet excitement. The bride, Elena, stood at the start of the aisle, her breath trembling in her chest. She had dreamt of this day 1,000 times, but she hadn't imagined this. Right there, at the mouth of the aisle, blocking her every step, stood a scruffy, mud-streaked dog. A stray, ribs visible beneath its patchy fur, tail lowered in cautious flicks. Its eyes were sharp and wild. Not the soft gaze of a friendly pup. It wasn't growling, but it wasn't moving either. Just standing, as though it had every right to be there, as though it were guarding something precious. A murmur rippled through the guests. The music stuttered and faded to silence. All eyes swung between the bride and the animal, uncertain whether to laugh at the absurdity or freeze in shared tension. Elena's heart galloped. She tightened her grip on the bouquet, white knuckles standing out against her pale skin. Her father, beside her, leaned in. "Do you want me to—" "No," Elena whispered, surprising herself. She wasn't afraid, not exactly. There was something about the dog's stare. Urgent, pleading, almost desperate. It wasn't blocking her for mischief. It wanted something. Her veil fluttered in the breeze as she took a cautious step forward, her heels clicking against the stone. The dog flinched but didn't budge. Its eyes, amber and intense, locked onto hers, and for a fleeting second she saw something, felt something. A strange connection, like a silent cry for help sent straight into her chest. Why? Why now? Of all moments, of all places, on the very edge of her new life. Her guests began whispering nervously. The priest glanced over his shoulder. Even the groom, Thomas, standing beneath the flowered arch, frowned in growing concern. "Elena?" His voice, steady but tight, drifted across the space between them. She hesitated, then spoke, almost to herself. "There's something wrong." The breeze carried her words like a secret across the courtyard. Her next step felt heavier, like she was crossing a threshold into something far beyond her wedding day. The dog's ears pricked forward, and for a brief, heart-thudding moment, she saw its gaze flicker. Not at her, but toward something in the distance. Behind the chapel, as if warning her, as if pleading, "Don't ignore me." The tension gripped the entire scene like a rope pulled taut. Elena's chest tightened as she fought to keep her composure. Her father's hand hovered protectively by her arm, his face drawn between duty and confusion. "Elena, it's just a stray," he tried to reassure, but his words felt hollow against the heavy silence. But she knew. Deep inside, she knew this wasn't an accident. This wasn't just a hungry dog stumbling into a feast of flowers and celebration. The stray's posture was rigid but trembling, as if it balanced on a knife's edge between fear and urgency. Then it did something that made her pulse spike. It took a step back, never breaking eye contact, then another and another. Not running, not fleeing, leading. Elena's eyes followed the direction of its retreat, around the edge of the chapel, toward the dense woods beyond the grounds. "Elena, wait," Thomas called out. But her feet were already moving, the hem of her dress skimming the earth as she stepped away from her father's side. Gasps broke out among the guests, some rising from their seats, others pulling out their phones, unsure whether to film or help. The dog paused, checking to see if she followed. Elena swallowed hard and continued, her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. Each step pulled her further from the safe script of her wedding day, deeper into a script she didn't understand. Her father protested, but she raised a hand to still him. There was something about this moment that felt inevitable. As she rounded the chapel, the sun caught on something glinting in the grass beyond the garden fence. Her breath hitched. A flash of metal. Twisted. Broken. Unmistakably out of place amid the pristine wedding venue. A car. Crashed against a tree. Her bouquet slipped from her fingers, petals scattering like soft raindrops across the earth. "Oh my God," she breathed. The dog barked sharply, an urgent snap of sound that jolted her from her frozen state. "Elena!" Her father's voice chased her, but she broke into a run, her gown gathering dirt and bramble as she sprinted toward the wreckage. The stray was already there, circling the car like a frantic sentinel. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. Smoke curled from beneath the crumpled hood. The driver's door hung open, and slumped across the seat, barely conscious, was a man. A man in a delivery uniform. For a moment, Elena's mind refused to process what she was seeing. The whole scene felt like it belonged to another world, far from lace veils and wedding marches. Her knees buckled as she dropped beside the wreckage. The delivery man's face was pale beneath smears of blood and grime. His eyes fluttered, unfocused, lips parting in a dry rasp of breath. She caught only fragments of his whisper. "Box. Chapel. Please." The stray barked again, sharp and commanding, as if to say, "Hurry." "Elena." Her father finally reached her, out of breath, followed by several guests, their formal clothes awkwardly at odds with the muddy terrain. Her eyes darted to the passenger seat, and there, partially buried beneath crumpled parcels and torn bubble wrap, was a small wooden box, delicately carved, edges singed as if it had narrowly escaped fire. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, pulling it free. A name was etched on the lid in swirling script. Her name, Elena Grace Waverly. Her breath caught. "What is this?" The man struggled to lift his head, his voice rasped, full of urgency and pain. It's from your mother." Time seemed to fracture. A roar filled her ears, drowning out the murmurs of the crowd behind her. Her mother. Gone for over a decade, buried memories clawed their way to the surface. "No," Elena whispered, tears burning hot in her eyes. "That's not possible." But the man gave a weak, determined nod, even as he slipped further into unconsciousness. He had fought to deliver this, risked his life. Beside her, the stray whined softly, brushing its nose against her knee as if urging her to open the box. Her fingers, trembling, found the latch. The lid creaked open, revealing a folded letter atop layers of delicate fabric. She unfolded the paper with care, her vision swimming through tears. "My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, it means I could not be there on your wedding day. But there is something you must know, something I could not let remain buried with me." Her breath shuddered. The words blurred, but the meaning pierced clear as sunlight through fog. Secrets, long-held, deeply buried truths. And the dog, this brave, relentless creature, had led her straight to them. Elena's hands trembled as she held the letter. The words seemed to blur together, but she forced herself to focus, breathing in ragged gasps between each line. "There is something you must know, something I could not let remain buried with me." Her mother's handwriting, elegant yet unmistakably rushed, carried weight far beyond the ink on the page. "Years ago, before you were born, there was a promise I made. A promise that would someday find you, even if I could not." The wind seemed to hush around her, as though the very earth leaned closer to listen. The dog, her strange, uninvited guardian, sat beside her now, watching intently with soulful eyes. Her father, peering over her shoulder, had gone rigid. His lips parted, but no words came. Instead, his eyes locked on the letter as though it, too, haunted him. "The day you marry, you will stand at a crossroads. You will feel it in your heart, even before you know why. Trust your instincts, Elena. Trust them the way I trusted you would find this when the time was right." The box beneath the letter contained an old locket, tarnished, but still gleaming faintly. Elena snapped it open, revealing a photograph of her mother, young and radiant, and beside her a man Elena did not recognize, but her father, standing next to her, let out a choked gasp. "That's—" he rasped. His knees seemed to weaken beneath him. "That's Samuel." "Who's Samuel?" Elena's voice came out hoarse, as if her throat were filled with dust. Before he could answer, the delivery man stirred again, groaning in pain. He's alive," the man croaked, eyes fluttering open for a heartbeat. "But not for long. The dog found him. Please, follow the dog." The stray barked once, sharp and decisive, then rose to its feet, glancing between Elena and the woods beyond the crash site. Without waiting, Elena stood, clutching the letter in the box tightly to her chest. Mud streaked her gown, her veil snagged and torn by thorns, but she no longer cared. She followed the dog as it darted into the trees, her father stumbling after her. The guests hesitated, unsure whether to follow, but curiosity and concern overtook them. Like a procession abandoning their seats at a forgotten ceremony, they trailed behind her into the shadowed woods. The deeper they went, the thicker the silence became, broken only by the crunch of leaves underfoot and the dog's urgent, guiding barks. Something waited ahead, and Elena could feel it in her bones. Whatever it was, it would change everything. The forest swallowed them whole. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting fractured light across the path. Elena's breath came in quick bursts, every nerve in her body prickling with anticipation. The dog, despite its ragged state, moved with determination, weaving between trees, pausing only to check if Elena was still following. She quickened her pace, ignoring the sting of brambles against her skin, the weight of the sodden wedding dress dragging at her ankles. Her father kept close, his face drawn tight with an emotion she couldn't quite read, guilt, fear, or something deeper. "Elena," he began, his voice rough with strain, "there's something I never told you." But before he could continue, they broke into a clearing. At first she didn't see him, then her eyes adjusted to the dim light. There, beneath a crooked oak tree, lay a man wrapped in an old coat, his back propped against the trunk, his breaths shallow but present. His face bore the lines of hardship, yet there was a gentleness about him, a familiarity that made Elena's chest ache even before she understood why. The dog ran to him, whining softly, nuzzling his cheek as if urging him to wake. Elena's father froze, pale as ash. "Samuel," he whispered, his voice cracking. The man's eyes fluttered open at the sound of his name. He blinked blearily, focusing on Elena first. His lips parted in a faint smile, wistful, almost sad. "You found me," Samuel rasped, his gaze softening as he took her in. "She said you would." Elena's heart pounded. "Who are you?" she asked, barely able to speak. Samuel's gaze drifted toward her father, then back to her. "Your uncle," he whispered, "your mother's brother." Her breath caught. She had never known her mother had a sibling. No one had ever spoken of him. Why are you here?" she managed. Samuel's eyes clouded with pain, but his expression remained gentle. "Because there's more to your family than you know. Secrets that should have died with me, but your mother, she wanted you to know the truth." He coughed, a deep, rattling sound that sent fear spiking through her. "She wanted you to have this," he added weakly, reaching beneath his coat and pulling out a second, smaller box. His hands trembled as he offered it to her. Elena took it, her heart heavy and pounding. She opened the lid to reveal a pair of wedding rings, aged but beautifully crafted. "These were our parents' rings," her father whispered, his voice hollow. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Her mother's voice seemed to echo in her mind. "Trust your instincts, Elena. Trust them the way I trusted you. Time felt fragile in that clearing, as though the entire world had paused to witness this hidden reunion. Elena knelt beside Samuel, her fingers curling tightly around the box of rings. "Tell me everything," she begged, her voice shaking. Samuel's breath rattled unevenly, but he forced a faint, pained smile. "Your father and we were once brothers by more than blood. We were bound by a promise. Your mother, she loved us both, but it was your father she chose." Elena's eyes flicked toward her father, whose face had gone slack with grief. "But," Samuel continued, "when you were born, I vowed to protect you, to protect your family." His gaze drifted toward the faithful dog, lying beside him like a loyal guardian. "She saved me. This dog. She led me to you when I thought I would die in these woods." Tears blurred Elena's vision. Samuel's voice softened to a whisper. "Your mother. She never stopped loving her family. These rings, she wanted you to carry them forward. She wanted your marriage to begin not in ignorance of the past, but in its light." His breathing grew shallow. Elena clutched his hand tightly. "Stay with me, please." But Samuel only shook his head faintly, peace settling over his features. "You've already given me peace, child," he murmured. With one final labored breath, his eyes drifted shut. The clearing held its breath. For a heartbeat, the silence felt unbearable. Then the dog, this brave, tireless creature, let out a low, mournful whine and pressed its head against Samuel's chest. Elena's tears fell freely now, splashing onto the old wooden box. She looked up at her father, whose face was streaked with tears of his own. "I should have told you," he whispered brokenly. "I kept him from you to protect you, or so I thought." Elena shook her head gently. "No more secrets." With trembling hands, she removed the rings from the box, cradling them as though they were made of glass. Slowly, reverently, she turned back toward the trail that led to the chapel. The guests, who had followed in stunned silence, now stood in a loose circle around the clearing, witnessing this moment as though it were part of the ceremony itself. Elena, streaked with dirt, tears, and sweat, stepped forward, her gown torn and stained yet radiant with a new kind of beauty. In her hands, the rings glinted softly in the light filtering through the trees. The dog, her unlikely herald, rose and walked at her side as she led the way back to the chapel. The guests, who had followed in stunned silence, now stood in a loose circle around the clearing, witnessing this moment as though it were part of the ceremony itself. Elena, streaked with dirt, tears, and sweat, stepped forward, her gown torn and stained yet radiant with a new kind of beauty. In her hands, the rings glinted softly in the light filtering through the trees. The dog, her unlikely herald, rose and walked at her side as she led the way back to the chapel. There was no music as they returned, only the hushed awe of those who had witnessed something far deeper than vows exchanged under an arch. Thomas stood waiting, his eyes wide, filled with love and understanding. He held out his hands without a word, and Elena placed the rings into his palms. "These belonged to my grandparents," she said softly, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "My mother wanted me to have them, to start this marriage with truth." Tears welled in Thomas's eyes as he nodded, slipping one ring onto her finger with reverent care. "And you've brought them full circle," he whispered. The priest, though still visibly moved by the strange turn of events, cleared his throat and stepped forward. He glanced at the dog, who now lay quietly at Elena's feet, and then back at the couple. "Then let these rings not only bind you in love," the priest said, his voice thick with emotion, "but also in legacy, in truth, in family." As the vows were spoken, the sun broke free of the clouds, illuminating the chapel in a warm, golden glow. When the ceremony ended, the guests erupted into applause, their cheers tinged with tears. But it was the moment afterward that held the true weight. Elena knelt beside the stray dog, gently cradling its face in her hands. "You saved us," she whispered. The dog licked her cheek once, then settled by her side as though it had always belonged there. And in that moment everyone felt it. Not just a marriage, but a union of past and future, of lost and found, a story they would tell for generations. And as you sit here now, listening to this tale, I have to ask you, what would you do if life placed an unexpected guardian in your path? Would you trust the journey, even if it meant straying from everything you thought you knew?